Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to my review of tonight's edition of SmackDown. And tonight's SmackDown was held from the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence, Rhode Island. And of course, this was the last night, the final night of the Superstar Shakeup, which we had also last night on Raw. And I gotta say, tonight's SmackDown, I enjoyed it. I thought it was an enjoyable SmackDown. The roster now for SmackDown is packed with superstars that I enjoy. Superstars that are coming up from NXT and the superstars that are coming over from Raw onto SmackDown. But it just made it an enjoyable show. And the show opened up with tonight with AJ Styles coming out, saying that he dreamed about having the match with Shinsuke Nakamura at WrestleMania, and he goes on to say that he was successful and Nakamura failed, and when Nakamura ended up blowing Styles, Styles goes on to say that Nakamura showed his true colors, because of that, and Styles ends up calling Nakamura a con artist, because Styles says that's what Nakamura is. Styles says he wants his payback to Nakamura, and he goes on to say that he had an even more dream match with Daniel Bryan last week, but Nakamura ended up ruining it. And he says he's not leaving the ring until Nakamura comes out. And basically Styles wants to fight Nakamura. And so Nakamura doesn't come out, but Aiden English and Rusev end up coming out. And, he had Aiden, just talking, and he was, doing like this sort of like rap. And then Styles says to Rusev, let's fight right now. And so Rusev ends up coming down to the ring, and the match started, which basically the match was pretty much nothing. Styles had the calf crusher on Rusev, but Aiden English ended up coming in, and he took down Styles, which caused the match to be a DQ. So then Daniel Bryan ends up coming out, and he beats down on Rusev. And we saw Styles takes down Aiden English. So pretty much that basically what happened. Basically it was pretty much a nothing match. So, and then we had Shane McMahon backstage. Paige ends up walking in. She's new SmackDown general manager. Announced last week. So she ends up walking in, and Paige says to Shane that there is going to be a tag team match later tonight, and it's going to be Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles versus Rusev and Aiden English. So pretty much it was just that little backstage segment with Shane and Paige. And then we had Shelton Benjamin end up coming out, saying, he sees big things in Chad Gable's future. Now that Chad Gable is on Raw now. It was announced last night. And Shelton Benjamin goes on to say that he never needed Chad Gable, and that Chad Gable needed him. And he goes on to say, Shelton Benjamin goes on to say that his Twitter got hacked last night. And Shelton goes on to say that he needs the respect that he deserves, and the championship opportunities that he owes, that he should be given. And he says that he said to Paige that he wants big competition, and so he's waiting for his opponent, and thinking that it was going to be Randy Orton, because Randy Orton ended up coming down. But then Jeff Hardy ends up coming out. So Jeff Hardy is the first person to go to SmackDown. The new United States champion. he's a Grand Slam champion as of winning the title last night on Raw. And it was pretty obvious. I knew that Jeff Hardy was going to come to SmackDown, be a part of the SmackDown roster. And so the match got underway. Jeff Hardy versus Shelton Benjamin. It was an enjoyable match. It was a decent match. It was back and forth between Jeff Hardy and Shelton Benjamin. Jeff Hardy was entertaining during the match. Jeff Hardy ended up getting the win with the Twist of Fate. He ended up hitting the Twist of Fate on Shelton Benjamin. And then he hit the Swanton Bomb to Shelton also to score the win. And so Jeff Hardy ended up winning. But the match itself, it was a decent match. It was enjoyable. I'm happy to see that Jeff Hardy is now part of the SmackDown roster, which, we all knew that probably Jeff Hardy was gonna go to SmackDown with the United States title. So then we saw the Miz end up cutting a promo saying about Daniel Bryan's tweet from last night, saying how Daniel wants to punch him in the face, and he asks the Rhode Island crowd if he wants to see Daniel punch him in the face tonight. And the crowd starts chanting. The crowd, really would like to see that. But Miz ends up going, it's too bad, because he is back in LA with, of course, his wife Maurice and his new baby girl. And he says to Daniel, if he ever says anything like that again, he's going to kick Daniel's ass. So, but it was just that promo from Miz. Pretty much, basically, we all know that feud is gonna come, with Miz and Daniel Bryan. And then we had Luke Harper versus Jey Uso. The match itself, it was short. You had Jimmy Uso and Eric Rowan out there. Jimmy Uso ended up kicking Eric Rowan, and Luke Harper ended up getting the win on Jey Uso. Then you had, after the match, the Bludgeon Brothers do damage on the Usos. We had, I think, Jimmy Uso ended up taking one of the Bludgeon Brothers mallets and ramming it right into, I think it was Eric Rowan, and that gave one of the Bludgeon Brothers to just drive Jimmy Uso into the steel steps. And, the Bludgeon Brothers wanted to do more damage, but Naomi ended up coming out to save, of course, her husband, Jimmy Uso. And she ends up, screaming, saying to them, "Oh, no more, no more," because, pretty much it looked like Jimmy Uso was hurt from that. But yeah, it was a short match, trying to make the Bludgeon Brothers more strong, as they really are now. Ever since ever since Harper and Rowan re-debuted on SmackDown. And then we had surprisingly Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe is now a part of the SmackDown roster, which that was surprising. So with Samoa Joe versus Sin Cara, Samoa Joe ended up getting the win with the Coquina Clutch to Sin Cara to score the win. Then after the match, Joe gets on the mic and says, SmackDown is the land of handouts. It's going to become the land of, it's the land of handouts. And he goes on to say that everyone on the SmackDown roster had it easy. And he goes on to say that, he's here and he will get the opportunities, with, certain superstars on the SmackDown roster. Like he said, he was going to put Daniel Bryan to sleep. And he's going to face the Viper, Randy Orton. And he will be the one to decimate AJ Styles. So, and then he says at the Greatest Royal Rumble, he will shred and put Roman out for good. And if he says if Roman is victorious at the Greatest Royal Rumble, he will end up tearing the Universal title from his waist. And he says, to believe that. And so he ended up ending that promo. So, but match itself, Samoa Joe and Sin Cara, it was quick. It was a quick match. Then we had Renee Young interviewing Daniel Bryan about why he helped AJ Styles, and Daniel says he wanted to help him because AJ Styles deserved it, and he goes on to say that he's proud to fight. He's proud to fight side by side with Styles tonight, and he goes on to say that one day they will go one-on-one. And then we see Big Cass. Big Cass is now part of the SmackDown roster. He's returned after 7.5 months because he was out with a knee injury, and he got hurt in his match with Enzo Amore in the Brooklyn Street fight on Raw, which I was at. I was at that Raw, and pretty much he had to have Big Cass had to have surgery for that, and time to recuperate. And so I was really happy to see Big Cass back. It's been a while since we see him. It's been 7.5 months since August since Big Cass has been out. So I'm glad to see Big Cass. So Big Cass ends up coming, and he calls Daniel Bryan, a little man. Like, we see the size difference, and then we just see Big Cass going, oh, little man. So pretty much that was the backstage segment with them. And it was also announced that Sanity, Killian Dane, Alexandra Wolf, and Eric Young, known as Sanity, they're going to be coming to SmackDown soon, which is awesome. But the one thing I'm disappointed with is Nikki Cross is not going with them, which it's not the same without Nikki Cross, because I'm a fan of Nikki Cross and Sandy. I'm a Sandy fan, since they were in NXT, they were great down there. They were really great tag team, really good staple. That was down there in NXT, but not having Nikki Cross go with them is kind of disappointing. I guess it's because since now NXT doesn't have Amber Moon anymore, or Peyton Royce and Billie Kay, I think they may want to have Nikki Cross go as a singles competitor, and have her do some good for the NXT Women's Division down there. So, but it's just not going to be the same without Nikki Cross, with Sandy on the main roster on SmackDown. I wish she was going though. So that was the announcement. And then we had Carmela end up coming out for her celebration of her celebration on winning the SmackDown Women's Championship last week, when she defeated Charlotte, or because Peyton Royce and Billie Kay ended up beating down on Charlotte last week. Carmela ended up cashing in her Money in the Bank last week, and ended up just kicking Charlotte to score the win and become the new SmackDown Women's Champion. So yeah, so she just ended up having her celebration, and she ends up saying, from now on, she wants to be called the Princess of SmackDown Live. Even though she's the Princess of Staten Island, she wants to be now called the Princess of SmackDown Live. And, she brags about how she beat Charlotte and how she waited until she beat Charlotte down on her own, on Charlotte's, own ego. She ends up playing a video package, which was just of her. And after, that video package was done, she's like, oh, I'm going to miss, her briefcase, which she named Frankie. And, she just talks and brags. Charlotte ends up coming out and says to Carmela that, her title reign, Carmela's title reign is like her memory. And she goes, it's going to be a short memory. And, Charlotte goes on to say to Carmela that, the only reason she won the Money in the Bank briefcase is because of James Ellsworth. And she goes on to say that the only reason she won the title last week was because of Peyton Royce and Billie Kay. And then we had Peyton Royce and Billie Kay end up coming out saying, Charlotte's blaming them for, her loss, for losing the SmackDown Women's title. Peyton Royce ends up calling Charlotte a baby. And we just go see Charlotte goes after Peyton Royce and Billie Kay. But the Iconics, come and beat down on her. Peyton Royce and Billie Kay end up being down on Charlotte again. Becky Lynch ends up coming out, and she ends up taking down Billie, making the save for Charlotte. And so it goes to commercial. Then when it comes back, we have another match. It's Charlotte versus Billie Kay. And this is Billie Kay's first match on the main roster on SmackDown. And the match itself, it was decent. It was, back and forth between Charlotte and Billie. We had Becky Lynch and Peyton Royce out there. Carmela was just sitting there at the announcer's table like a boss, just watching the match. And Charlotte ended up getting the win. She locked in the figure 8 on Billie Kay to score the win. Then after the match, Carmela ended up coming from behind, and she hit Charlotte with the SmackDown Women's title. And then we see Peyton ends up beating up on Becky Lynch. Asuka ends up coming out, and she ends up taking out Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, which Asuka is now on the SmackDown roster full time. So, but that's pretty cool. And it was just Asuka, Charlotte, and Becky in the ring, all three of them in the ring together, which was really cool. Then we had another tag team that's going to be joining the SmackDown roster. It was a promo package. There was a promo for Gallows and Anderson. Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson are going to be joining the SmackDown roster, which is awesome. Hopefully, they become, SmackDown tag team champions at some point because they deserve it. I hope they get a much better push on SmackDown, than how they were used on Raw. So, but I hope they use them. I hope SmackDown uses them good and gives them opportunities. Because SmackDown is the land of opportunities. So, but I hope they get a title shot, a tag team title shot at some point down the line. Then it was also announced that Cesaro and Sheamus, the Bar, are going to be joining the SmackDown roster for the tag team division. And they cut a promo just talking about, the SmackDown tag team. They mentioned the Bludgeon Brothers, they mentioned the Usos, the New Day. So it was pretty obvious. I knew that Cesaro and Sheamus were going to go to SmackDown. So there's more competition for SmackDown now with the tag team division. And so after that, we saw the New Day. They were backstage. They were just walking. They see R-Truth. R-Truth is now part of the SmackDown roster. I'm like, why? I like R-Truth, but he hasn't been used when he was on Raw. I can't remember the last time R-Truth was in a match on Raw. Maybe I think it was in August when I was at Raw at the Barclays, the Raw after SummerSlam. That was the last time I saw R-Truth ever compete. So yeah, so 7 months, 7.5 months we haven't seen R-Truth compete. So, but Ty Dillinger also ends up coming, and it's just we see Ty Dillinger and R-Truth, just having a stare down, and then they just start slapping hands, having fun. Ty Dillinger looked very excited that R-Truth is on SmackDown now. And then what was funny is R-Truth goes, "I'm glad to be back on Monday Night Raw." And then they go, "It's Tuesday." It was funny. It was just really funny. But it was a fun backstage segment with them. Then we had another superstar NXT call up that's going to be coming to SmackDown, and that is Andrade Cien Almas and also Zelina Vega. So that's pretty cool. So I guess it was his final NXT match was the NXT Takeover New Orleans match with Aleister Black, and Aleister Black defeated him to become the NXT champion. So pretty much people called saying that people knew that Andrade was going to come up to the main roster. Thinking people said he was probably going to go to Raw, but no, he's going to SmackDown, which is pretty good. At first, I wasn't a fan of Andrade in NXT, but after he had that match with Johnny Gargano, the guy is pretty decent in the ring. Andrade grew on me, and really happy to see him debut on SmackDown. Looking forward to his debut. Then we had the main event: Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles versus Rusev and Aiden English. And the match itself, it was decent. It was enjoyable. Daniel Bryan was awesome in the match. The crowd was chanting along with him, behind him, as always. And in the end, the match took a turn, was ruined because Nakamura ends up coming. He ends up blowing AJ Styles once again, just like last week and just like at WrestleMania. Then Big Cass ends up coming in and attacks Daniel Bryan. Hits him with a big boot, with a boot to the face to Daniel Bryan. And pretty much, basically we just saw, Big Cass stand there, like a tough guy. And before SmackDown went off the air, Renee Young comes back out, interviews Nakamura, and it was just the same as last week, where Nakamura ends up going, no speak English. Just the same as last week. And then we cut back and we see Big Cass still in the ring. Daniel Bryan is laid out, and SmackDown ends. So, but yeah. So, I mean, really glad to see, you know, Big Cass on SmackDown. You know, he's been out for a while. So, to recap all the SmackDown stars in the Superstar Shakeup, I have the list right here. The first one was The Miz, which was announced on Raw last night. Jeff Hardy. I know I said Jeff Hardy was the first, but you know, he's the second tonight. So that's my correction right there. So it was Miz as the first, Jeff Hardy the second. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville are now part of the SmackDown roster, which was predictable because, you know, Paige is the new SmackDown general manager, and you know about that. It was predictable. I knew Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville were going to go to SmackDown. We have Samoa Joe, Sanity, of course, Killian Dane, Alexander Wolf, and Eric Young. Big Cass, Asuka, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, Cesaro and Sheamus, R-Truth, and finally Andrade, Cien Almas, and Zelina Vega. So those are all the superstars that are now on the SmackDown roster, and it's pretty cool. SmackDown has got a stacked roster. I have to say this roster is much better than you know, the Raw Superstar Shakeup last night, where they just got rid of the garbage that SmackDown once had. So, but yeah, so SmackDown, like I said, it was an enjoyable show tonight. I really liked it. So, yeah, so anyways, that's it for my review of tonight's edition of SmackDown. Thank you all for watching, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and until the next video, I'll see you all later. Bye.